Because of what Ryan Harings has told me about Wisconsin fans not believing in wide receivers in the passing game, we're going to talk about that today in this crossover Locked On Badgers and the portal.
You are Locked On College Crossover, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
This crossover Locked On Badgers and Locked On the Portal. My guy Ryan Harings hanging out with me as we talk about tailgating at Wisconsin games later on in the show. In particular, there's one next season that's a little bit unique. It's going to be at Lambeau Field. What's going on around? We need some comments for people that are being whenever they watch this. Drop your thoughts. Lambeau, restaurants, and everything else. We're going to get into that. Big Ten coaching changes. It's going to impact Wisconsin. It's going to impact Ohio State, Iowa, everybody else, Michigan, Michigan State, a lot of things going on there. And of course, the Penn State saga. There's a lot to get to. But first things, we're going to talk about Wisconsin to NIL, wide receivers, quarterbacks. That whole first 10, 15 minutes is going to be delved into that area. And Ryan, right off the bat, what you told me before the show, I almost fell off my couch. Okay. Any Wisconsin fan that thinks receiver is not a very important position in today's game, you're a representation of why Wisconsin won, what was it, 4 games this year?
4.
4. If you want to continue to win 4, look at wide receiver is not important. That's how that works. Look, it's real simple, man. You got to be able to throw the ball consistently, and receivers got to know that you want to throw the ball. They're also not coming. So we'll get into that, but they need somebody to get them the ball. Carter Smith is an option. To my knowledge, he has not, as of the time we do this, right? He's no room. Is he leaving? Is he staying? What are you hearing, brother?
Yeah, so I think Carter Smith is staying. He is basically the young guy in the room. So there is certainly a path that you can sell to Carter Smith that you are the guy we're developing. You're the future of this program right now. There's nobody else that's young in the room that we can develop and put those resources into. And he's a player they prioritized. They really went after him, got him away from Michigan. We do live in this era where quarterbacks, if they don't play right away, they tend to leave. But Carter Smith is maybe wired a little bit differently. I think he's going to stay. But to your point, that he's an option, but he's not the option that they necessarily want to put all their eggs in next year. Luke Fickell has to win next year, Brian. He has to win next year.
Or
dot. You can't put if you have to win next year, you can't go into next year saying Carter Smith is our quarterback. It's just too much risk.
Yeah, I agree. He needs to be the backup quarterback next year if you can get somebody. And I'm glad I didn't know this going in when I did my little sheet for those you watching on YouTube. On the sidebar, I've got Wisconsin's NIL goes up, so ... And before that, I put portal quarterback options. They go together here because you told me off air Colton Joseph is somebody they're interested in. Well, so are the Florida Gators, I'm told, among others. This is not Ryan's favorite subject, and it's Wisconsin's NIL situation. Are you ready to spend $3 million? Yes or no?
I think the answer there is yes.
Okay, now we can talk. Okay, now we can have a real conversation.
This is what I'll say is they have said for the first time for 3 years they haven't been saying we're going to spend money in the portal, we're going to be competitive. For the very first time, really, in the portal era, they've said it is time for us to take this seriously. I'm paraphrasing. It's not the exact quote. We are going to spend near the top of the Big Ten, in the top quarter of the Big Ten. This is a major donor speaking. This is the program talking about it's time to invest resources. So there are a lot of Badger fans, I think myself included, Brian, who are very much, okay, now let's see it. Now you said the words, let's actually see the action. But I do think at the quarterback spot, they are ready to go top of the market. Which you have to. You absolutely have to if you want to bring in a Colton Joseph type. But I think they're going to do that. I think they're going to at least get in those conversations from a money standpoint. Now, Brian, is that enough? Because the question I get a lot is, okay, let's say hypothetically they do spend the money. They have an open Big Ten quarterback spot, so we can pay you top dollar and we can give you a starting job in the Big Ten. With everything else that's gone on with the program, a lack of receivers, lack of success, is that enough for a quarterback if they're competing with a Florida State?
That's a great question because it goes down to fit. I just literally did a podcast, my live show on the Portal podcast before I go into this room and do this with you, talking about that. Fit is everything. I was talking about Colton Joseph, Kenny Minchey, Aaron Nolan, guys that are either not at the P4 level or if they were, they barely played. How do you grade them? Part of that is off the field fit. guys like me get asked questions. Hey, what is this guy like? Who does he hang out with? Is he somebody that's going to be partying, or is he actually going to be watching film? Like, quarterback is different, fair or not. They can't be the party animal guy. If they are, the Jim McMahons of the world, if you ever look up that story, like guys like that's not how it works in today's world very often, unless they want to flame out. So especially a school like Wisconsin, that's probably not going to go over very well. So I think it's possible they could get a guy like Joseph if the fit is just right and there's other people around that he wants to be. Because like he's an LA kid that went to Old Dominion.
Mm-hmm.
He's outside the box. That is really wild. So I don't know if it's going to be him, if it's Kenny Minchey or somebody else, but there's different layers to it on how they could do that. Could they win that battle? Possibly, but the Bull Gator Club, when they want something, that's some pretty deep pockets. That could get interesting. Again, he's not a kid that was even in the P4, but he ran for 1,000 yards last year, including 179 against Indiana. He's got the highest rushing total of anybody, running back included, against Indiana in the last 2 seasons.
Yeah.
That's an athlete.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what they can do. And while we're at it, anybody else just off the top of your head, quarterback wise, that you've heard, or anybody that you would like for the Badgers to jump in on? Like I've got all kinds of stats on I'm sure you'd love them to get Drew Mestemaker. It's not happening, but like, what would you like?
It's a really good question. So Minchey's another name. I'm glad you brought him up. Minchey's another name that's been kicked around. Colton Joseph was one of the first that really came to board. Davis, the Harvard quarterback, who 6'2", 6'3", good arm, maybe not quite the athlete. Jaden Craig, sorry, I think is his name. He's another one that's been kicked around. 1 year of eligibility left, so that's a player who you probably get him, and he's more of a higher floor guy. Maybe not the athlete, the runner, but he has a lot of success throwing the ball. He's got a good frame. So some of those names are there that have been out there. I'm actually very curious on your take. If you are Luke Fickell, are you prioritizing Lincoln Kienholz, by the way, the Ohio State backup, another name I've just kind of heard thrown around?
Oh, I didn't know he was thinking about possibly entering.
I think there's just speculation there, but before he committed to Ohio State, Wisconsin was basically the school that had prioritized him the most before Ohio State swooped in. So there's a relationship there. Julian Sainz obviously not going anywhere next year. So if you're a backup quarterback at Ohio State and Julian Sainz ahead of you, I think it's just more speculation than anything. But if you're Luke Fickell, Brian, are you prioritizing a guy from a lower level football that started for a couple of years like a Colton Joseph, or are you prioritizing a backup at a place like Notre Dame, Ohio State, who has been in a winning program, has practiced against Power 4 opponents, or Power 4 players, but doesn't have the game reps that a guy like Colton Joseph has? What makes more sense if you're Luke Fickell?
That's where the podcast I just did talks about this. It's all about the recommendations behind the scenes. They're going to call the OCs and the quarterback coaches at every school. Notre Dame, Aaron Noland at South Carolina. He's a kid that went to Ohio State out of high school, then transferred to South Carolina. He's just got stuck behind great quarterbacks. Minchey stuck behind Carr. It's just awkward. You know what I mean? It's just awkward. Julian saying same thing for Kienholz. Like, yeah, you got to talk to quarterback coaches and then talk to a few of the people around, the agents and people that represent those schools. That's where you're going to get your information. You can get about 90% of what you want in about 10 minutes. It's interesting because it's nothing that's on a transcript, nothing electronic. It is all face-to-face or on a phone or on a FaceTime. That's how it works, because those are the times you can just be honest. When you're in a group of people or in front of a meeting, you can't tell you just can't do it. So it's got to be behind closed doors. To that end, before we jump into the receiver discussion, and we're going to go all in on this for the next segment, because it's got to be part of it. If they don't get some receivers, I'm going to cause a ruckus at the tailgate next year at Lambeau. Look, I don't know what their budget's going to be, but this is something I was thinking about. Since they have to win next year, could they take, like, again, the Jaden Craig kid from Harvard's pretty good. Could they take him and then save a little money? And for the love of mankind, can we get an elite offensive tackle at Wisconsin, or something of that, a great guard? They're not winning the national title next year anyway. Do you think that fans would be okay with that? Like if they took a guy that's not, maybe doesn't have the ceiling that Colton Joseph does, but it's going to be a good quarterback and you go to a bowl game, where would Wisconsin fans stand on that?
Yeah, that's an excellent question, man. I think after several years of watching what Wisconsin has done offensively from a passing game standpoint, just having any quarterback back there that can step back, take a 3-step drop, and fire a slant in between defenders is going to go over just fine in Madison. The bar has been so low because of and some of that's injuries, right? We've talked about that multiple times. Some of it's just injuries, but some of it is just this thing has been so broken. He could come in, the Harvard quarterback could come in. He's a good thrower. He really is a good thrower. He has experience there. Again, I don't think he's the best athlete and the best fit for what Jeff Grimes wants to do, who, much like Florida, Grimes wants a running quarterback. Grimes wants a guy who can rip off 20 yards on a quarterback power. I don't think that's necessarily him, but I think the bar has been so low that just getting someone who can be competent throwing the ball will be fine. In terms of big picture, I think if the Badgers don't win 8 games next year, 7, 8 games, people are going to be frustrated because the schedule does get a lot easier. The schedule gets a lot easier. We're going to spend money. Those have been the 2 biggest, call them excuses or not, injuries, schedule, and money. Well, if the schedule's easier next year and you spend money, you got to win some games. And I don't know if 7 wins is going to really placate the crowd.
We'll get into that conversation at the tailgate next year in Green Bay. I need to see the schedule and go over it again before I worry about that. But when we come back, wide receiver, the 2 positions go together, quarterback and receiver. If you want to get a Colton Joseph or Kenny Minchey or anybody else, you got to get some of those guys. That is next here on this crossover, Locked On Badgers and Locked On the Portal. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Game Time. There's nothing like the college football playoffs, the season, or anything else going on with college football. The games are awesome. Tailgates, packed stadiums, and being right there in the middle of it all. Energy, the bands, the moments you remember forever. But actually getting tickets isn't always that easy. The part used to be the most frustrating because the queues, the logins, and all the prices jumping at checkout when you get on these different apps, it can be very frustrating. That's why Game Time gives you the advantage. Back to you, the fans. It's the easiest way to unlock analyzing college football games right there in the stands, having fun with your friends, getting all the great experiences in just a few taps. I've gotten not 1, but 2 different games that I've gone to here recently. I just got great seats to go see Indiana play Kentucky in a basketball game. I was on the way home from my folks. Thought, you know what? I'm going to check this out. It was awesome. Took me less than 5 minutes to get tickets on Game Time, and I'd gotten tickets the weekend before to see a game in Indianapolis. Again, less than 5 minutes. That includes putting in my credit card info. Really, really simple. Take the guesswork out of buying college football tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, Locked On College for $20 off. Download the Game Time app today. Thank you once again for making the Portal Podcast and Locked On Badgers a part of your day. And if you want to take it to the next level, the Everydayer Club, guys like Ryan Harings, they're in demand, but you may not want to listen to all the advertisements during the show. For $5 a month or $50 for a year. You can check out the description in the link below, get all that info. And we also have a Discord. I actually go on Ryan's Discord once in a while to antagonize the Badger fans with reality sometimes. But this one's a little different. You've got it for all kinds of different teams, and you can go on the national one. It's a lot of fun. Check out the Everydayer Club. Ryan, wide receivers and the Badgers, they're like oil and water here in the last couple of seasons because they just can't get the ball. I think there's actually been more talent than what's seen. And is there somebody leaving? Who's portaling out? I'm sure there's more than one if I had to guess.
So let's talk about it for a second. There's nobody. There's nobody left in the room, Brian. So Vinny Anthony graduated. What? You and I have talked about Vinny. He's good. Eugene Hilton Jr. today announced he's going to be going to the portal. That was the big Badgers get last year. Trech Kekahuna has announced he's going to the portal. Kyan Barry Johnson has announced he's going to the portal. The Badgers next year are basically returning Chris Brooks Jr. and some preferred walk-ons. Let me ask you this. We recently did a show, and you and I talked about this before. I recently did a show where Badger fans pushed back against me a little bit. Some, not all, but some pushed back on the importance of receiver. Here's a comment from that show. Ryan, receiver is the most overrated position in college football. That's from somebody, a good dude who listens to my show. Another person said, Ryan, sorry, we can't prioritize receiver because we need to prioritize quarterback, defensive line, et cetera, et cetera. I'm of the mind that if you're going to bring in a big receiver or a big quarterback, you're going to spend there. To not equip him with receivers is borderline malpractice, and you are not going to win anything in college football if you don't have at least one guy on the boundary that can force coverages over to his side, that can beat one-on-one, that can win contested battles, that can force a defensive coordinator to adjust. Why can't we get a receiver that works? And B, agree or disagree on the importance of receiver in today's college football?
It's very important. If you look at the teams that are winning, You know who is the most archaic coach in college football? I'll give you a hint on his location. It's Athens, Georgia. You know what they've done in their last 2 recruiting classes? Recruit a ton of big-time receivers. He doesn't want to throw the ball. Kirby Smart does not like throwing the ball. But if he wants to beat Alabama and Ohio State and Notre Dame and LSU and all these different schools, got to do it. To that end, who are you attracting at quarterback without receivers? Why in the world would I go there? This is going to be a problem. Like, if you're talking to Colton Joseph or anybody else, they're going to be like, why am I coming? I mean, this is going to be not expensive, but uber expensive if they want to make it happen next year.
Do you need to get the quarterback first for the receivers?
It's got to be mutual. They got to know. They've got to talk to each other because the 2 positions are more connected than any other 2 position in sport. I don't think you're going to get a Joseph or anybody else without them knowing that you already have somebody else, whether it's private or not, it's not important to the quarterback, that, hey, this guy's coming. And we got a couple other guys we can work with, and I may be bringing my guy, blah, blah, and I'll recruit you guys. They got to know there's somebody you're bringing in or they've talked to and tried to recruit there. It says yes, or they're not getting anybody. Carter Davis or Carter Smith will be the quarterback next year, and you're just going to roll. Good luck. It's just the reality. Like, I deal with quarterbacks, receivers all the time in 7-on-7s and camps. That group is very linear. It's connected. If you don't have somebody lined up, it ain't happening. And it should be. But my God, there's nobody on your depth chart. It can't be hard to sell playing time.
It won't be.
I'm sure if they're spending more money, I mean, it's like there's got to be a couple of kids, like, and a few of the guys they signed, et cetera, are going to play, but they got to get a veteran. And I'm just going to say it, it's going to be an expensive get because this is funny. Our buddy Zach Blackerby at Auburn does Locked On Auburn. He said this to me the other day, and this is hilarious. He says, a lot of kids are getting cut and things are happening. He goes, I think it's because of the suck tax. And I said, what? He says, because Auburn sucked. They had to overpay for a bunch of these guys. New coaches came in and said, we're not paying this much. Wisconsin's about to go through that.
Yeah.
With receivers. I'm just like, if it's 800,000 at Ohio State, it's going to be 1.1 at Wisconsin. That's just reality. You know what I mean?
That's a really good point. And here's the thing. They need 4 to 5 receivers in the portal. So if you,
that's why I said really expensive because it's volume.
Yeah. So if you're gaming that out, obviously you're not getting 4 or 5 tier A, top of the board guys. But if you're gaming it out, because there are a lot of receivers that enter the portal. Receiver,
that's the easiest spot to get somebody is receiver.
Right. Maybe running back too at points because there's so many guys at lower levels. But receiver, it seems like there's a ton of volume. You should be able to carve out 4 to 5 pretty good options in the portal if you have money, right? Am I crazy there?
No, if you want to spend $3 million, you can go get 5 receivers and be in good shape, pay $600,000, maybe one of them's 8 and one of them's 400. You'd be fine. That's pretty normal. But will they do that? Like you were telling me, like, I need to see it. Right. But if you're going to get the quarterback, these things go hand in hand. I think there'll be a lot of communication behind closed doors for that to happen. Because otherwise, like, again, why would Colton Joseph or insert name, Kenny Minchey, Dylan Raiola, anybody want to go there? I'm not throwing, some guy I've never heard of, some walk-on. I got a chance to play in the NFL. What am I doing here? So they're going to have to open up the wallets quite a bit there. But I'm okay if they take several good players and play the freshmen, and this is your work-through year. That's why somebody like Joseph would be interested. He's got 2 years.
Mm-hmm.
So that may not help with Carter Smith very much, but there's a lot. That's a conversation you got to have with Carter face-to-face if you're the Wisconsin coaching staff. I don't have that ability, but Jaden Craig makes sense from that perspective. Like, he's accurate. He threw the ball around 2,600 yards or something like that last year at Harvard. I was just looking at his stats for this show. Maybe they go that route, but I don't know. I'll give you the last thought here. Do you expect, just yes or no, this is going to put Ryan right on the spot. Will Wisconsin go all in on like a boundary receiver? Will they really try to get, I'm not saying they'll get him, but like make an $800,000 offer or something to a 6'3", 205-pound guy that Big Ten schools, SEC schools want?
I think yes. Will they get him? I don't know. I think they will go all in on a boundary receiver because you absolutely have to.
Yeah, I agree.
I just don't see a scenario where you're going to go out and spend big. And this is kind of what I said earlier, but I don't see a scenario where you go out and you spend big on a quarterback and then you don't give them any receivers to throw to. You haven't fixed the problem. And the problem isn't quarterback, right? The problem is passing game. The problem is the passing game hasn't been good enough. And quarterback is a giant part of that, but receivers are too. You got to have somebody who can beat. And we've seen this for a couple of years at Wisconsin, even a Vinny Anthony. Well, when Penn State came to Madison a couple of years ago, they just played press man. And they said, we don't know if you're going to beat us consistently on the edge. And we couldn't. Wisconsin couldn't. You need a guy. So will they get him? I think is a better question, but I do think they'll prioritize it because I don't think there's a reason not to.
Who are the toughest 3 Big Ten schools they'll play next year? I know they played Notre Dame preseason. Who do they play big? Who are the 3 toughest?
They play Notre Dame. They'll have USC. Hold on one second. Let me pull up their schedule again. They do so next year, we talked about this a lot. The schedule next year does ease up a lot. You are
That certainly helps.
You are able to, for the first time, to duck Alabama in the non-con. So as I mentioned, you got USC, you're gonna have Penn State, at Iowa. So Brian, you miss Michigan, you miss Oregon, you miss Ohio State.
That's pretty big.
And who knows? We're going to talk Penn State. We're going to talk coaching in a second, but who knows with Penn State, right? I mean, Penn State is at a year flux. It's a much easier schedule. But I will say this, playing at Penn State, playing at USC, they're still going to have athletes. Those schools will always have athletes in the secondary. And that's, again, where you need athletes on the boundary to counter those players.
100%. When we come back, we are going to dive into that because Wisconsin has a chance, if they do this portal thing right, because of what's going on in the Big Ten, not just next year, but make a move up that I honestly didn't expect them to make anytime soon. I'm not the most positive Badger guy. This will be the most positive Badger segment I've ever done, ever. And if it doesn't happen, blame Ryan. Don't blame me. He's in charge of all the NIL. So that is next here on the Portal Podcast crossover with Locked On Badgers. All right, today's sponsor is FanDuel. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play, and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver gets hot, defense tightens up, a quarterback makes a momentum shifting play, and then all of a sudden, there it is. The lines change, point spreads, money lines, everything go adjusting right there. Player props are also changed, maybe from 225 yards passing to 260. Maybe it's something else with the receiver. You can bet on anything from touchdowns to end of quarters. You can bet on player props, anything you want with FanDuel live in the game. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action, FanDuel.com. Place your live NFL bets all season long and through the playoffs. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. All right, Ryan. Penn State, that is one of the weirdest things I've ever seen. I called who they should hire from the outset, Matt Campbell from Northern Ohio. Like he would fit in at Penn State. They went around to him. Why? I don't know why. Good hire. But they signed, what was it, like 6 players in recruiting? And like they just lost, 247 thinks is the number 1 player in the portal, the defensive end. He's from Ohio. I wonder where he's going to go. You're lucky you're missing the Buckeyes next year. That probably isn't going to be much fun for many people to do.
We're fine. We can take a couple years of layup schedules now after taking our beating. Badgers finished with the toughest schedule in the country this year per just about every source you could find. And I'll say this, the Badgers, I think, have finally kind of come around to realizing that. So the Pitt game, there's games that they're trying to actively move now because you don't get it. You don't get a merit badge for having a tough schedule but getting your butt kicked. That's not something that helps you in college football in today's game. So I think we're easing out of that era of really tough Badger schedules, fortunately.
Yeah. To that end, I'm doing a show with Matt Sheehan and Locked On Spartans here in a little bit. Like that is looks like a bunch of grenades went off over there in East Lansing, man. That's good night. To that, Michigan State's down.
Yep.
I don't even know what to define Michigan because that fan base has an extremely linear view of what kind of head coach they should get. Those guys ain't available right now. You've got to, this is probably the only time I'm ever going to say this on this show. So Badger fans, listen up. If you're going to make a move on all these programs, what we talked about earlier in the show, NIL and all that, it better be this offseason. Because Penn State, Michigan, and Michigan State, those are not programs that are going to stay down long. You better hit the gas right now. NIL for recruiting, NIL for coaches, NIL for players staying on the roster. That's the number one thing. Retain your roster. Don't let guys pick you apart. Thank you, Xavier Lucas. But you have to be able to, he's a good player, man. Like he helped Miami a lot this year. You have to be able to protect your roster. And then, like we were talking, your quarterback receiver part of it. Shockingly, I think they need to get at least one stud offensive lineman. Like they need somebody that's a bulldozer. It's so weird to say that about the Badgers, but they're okay up front, but they need to be better. And then on defense, just wherever you can get talent, especially outside the numbers. We've talked about that 100 times. So to that end, I think they got a chance to go bowling next year if everything falls right. Who knows with Penn State? They play Michigan State next year? If they do.
Don't think they do.
That's a team you'd want to play. Like that's first year.
No, they do. Sorry, I have it on the side. So they get. By the way, here's their road, or their home Big Ten slate next year. They got USC, Rutgers, Minnesota, Michigan State, and that's it. I mean, there's no. They could easily sweep their home. I shouldn't say easily because this is a program that has struggled in recent years too. That's the wrong word. They lost to Maryland at home this year. On paper, to your point, on paper, if they do what they need to do this offseason, and they are going to invest money, on paper, the home slate next year could be incredibly favorable for the Badgers. And then you just have to win a couple. You have to win a couple on the road. Outside of Notre Dame, their non-con is pretty simple. Yeah, this is a bold team. If they take care of business this offseason, Brian, and for once their quarterback doesn't get hurt because the last 3 years that has happened.
Awful. That's been awful.
But like if that happens, this is a bowl team next year. And then I guess here's the question, right? Let's say it's a bowl team next year. They win 7 games. Is that progress? Question mark. Or is it simply we played an easier schedule? I think that's the other thing Badger fans are going to grapple with. If it is like a 7 win. Now, if you win 9 or 10, just hypothetically, that's obvious progress, right? That's obvious. But if it's 7 or 8, is it progress in year 4, Fickell? Or is it you just played a much easier schedule? That's a hard question to answer.
I actually think it's pretty easy because if they win 7 or more, that means the conversation we had earlier in this show came to fruition. They're not winning 7 games unless they spend some money on quarterback and receiver. Until you all start spending NIL money, you ain't going to bowls.
Good point.
It's unfortunate, but like there's a level like you got to hit just to get to 500 anymore. I was on the phone with an agent this morning for a better part of an hour telling me how this stuff works. Like the money that I was told, it's like for a high school kid for 2 years was $1.2 million. I don't think Wisconsin likes hearing those kinds of numbers very much, but if they want to win, they better figure that out.
Yeah, I don't think a lot of schools like hearing those numbers outside of the top tier. Did you put in a good word for Wisconsin, by the way, while you're on the phone?
He's already signed to the school he went to, but it was just an example. It was just
on it. We'll take whatever we can get here. Yeah, I will say this too, right? Like Wisconsin won 4 games this year against one of the hardest schedules in the country. They won 5 games last year, and both years were without a quarterback, essentially. I mean, if you just add a quarterback into the mix with an easier schedule, you're getting 6 to 7 wins just off of that, I would think. Can you get to 8 or 9? That's really, to me, where you get to 8 or 9, that means you did spend in the portal. That means you really went and got a dude on the outside.
Well, that also means you got a little luck with QB and the coaching worked out. They give me your 10 cents. I ain't trying to go down this path on this episode. We do it more after the new year, but coaching changes, back office change. Is there anything that Badger fans need to know about or I need to know about that are significant?
There was a significant move recently. So the Badgers moved on from A.J. Blazik, the offensive line coach who was previously at Vanderbilt. They brought in Arkansas's coach, Matios, who for years has had a pretty good offensive line. He coached at Baylor, but primarily I think the draw here is he has worked with Jeff Grimes, the offensive coordinator. So they've worked together at Baylor. I think there's going to be a little more idea of what those two sides want from each other from the offensive coordinator standpoint and the offensive line standpoint. That could be a nice win for the Badgers because the offensive line, some of this is, again, injuries again, but the offensive line hasn't been as good as Wisconsin needs it to be either. So they did make a change there. Back office stuff, they are looking to add another body there. They lost one of their directors of personnel to Oklahoma State, but he's not their main guy. I think you'll see body shuffle there, but nothing dramatic. They're still reeling a little bit really quickly. A couple years or a year and a half ago, they lost, I think it was maybe a year ago, they lost Max Steinecker, who's a really big part of the recruiting department to USC. And it was him and Pat Lambert that have been kind of tied at the hip with Luke Fickell since Cincinnati. I don't think they fully replaced Max Steinecker yet. I think they're still chasing that dynamic guy. He was the young dynamic guy in that recruiting room that really helped the Badgers build those top 25 classes when Luke Fickell first got here. I don't think they've replaced him yet. And he went to USC, USC also spends a lot of money, but you look at what they do in recruiting, there's a reason USC went to get Max Steinecker. I don't think Wisconsin's fully replaced him yet.
Yeah, that's important to note. Last thing, tailgating in restaurants around Lambeau. For anybody listening to this pod or watching this on YouTube, whatever it is, comment. I'd be really curious on restaurants in the greater Green Bay area. I have no idea. Ryan and I are going to go to the Wisconsin Notre Dame game next year. And tailgating, like what is expected, all that. Just any comments, things you expect, for lack of a better term, with Wisconsin fans. I haven't been to a Wisconsin game before, so I'm really curious. For you, Ryan, what is it that you're bringing besides beer? What are you interested in? Beer's that's anything.
I'm just bringing this, right? If you're listening on audio, it's the whole package. I'm bringing Ryan. I don't know what else I'll bring. We will do. I will try to get a bit of a locked on meetup there. So if Brian Smith is coming in, we'll get some other people there. I'm sure there's people that would love to come say hi to Brian, who, despite the criticism at times, you are really one of the people that people always tell me we love it when Brian comes on because he's honest, he's authentic, and you need that outside voice sometimes otherwise we get a little siloed, right? We just talk in kind of our echo chambers, and every fan base is like that. So Brian being able to come on and talk some truth at times to pierce the veil of fandom is a big deal. So we'll bring people out there. We'll get a set up. But as Brian said, drop any recommendations you have. I don't get to Lambeau very often, and I live on the other side of the state, so I very rarely get to that area of Wisconsin. So any recommendations, thoughts, especially as this game gets closer, would be phenomenal.
Absolutely. Ryan, tell everybody where they can find your work, my friend.
Yeah, Locked On Badgers, YouTube, audio, all that good stuff. Ryan and Bucky on Twitter. And then Brian and I, we continue to have these kind of crossovers, especially I can't wait till after January 2nd when we can start coming on and talking about, I don't know, maybe Colton Joseph as a Badger, maybe Aiden Childs, another name I've kind of heard like as a Badger. Maybe we can talk about some quarterbacks. I can't wait.
I'm actually looking forward to that. We need Wisconsin to take a step. Not a step. We need to take 2 or 3 steps this next season, to be honest with you, because we need them in a bowl game.
I need that.
His wife probably needs it for her psychology too, from listening to Ryan complain about it, I'm sure, but that's part of it. Thank you very much for making the Portal Podcast and Locked On Badgers part of your day, each and every day right here. We will see you again soon.